with great pleasure that I welcome. Good afternoon. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to the Open Government Federal Advisory Committee's first administrative meeting. The Open Government Federal Advisory Committee is a federal advisory committee subject to the Federal Advisory Committee Act. My name is Arthur Brunson, and I am the designated federal officer, or DFO, and Daniel York is the alternate DFO for this committee. As a reminder, this meeting is open to the public and is being recorded. A copy of the recording, along with the meeting minutes and a list of attendees, will be posted at www.gsa.gov/usopen.gov. That's USOPEN.gov in the coming days. Federal advisory administrative meetings are generally closed to the public, but given the spirit of open government, we have elected to open this meeting up so that the public can watch. As such, members of the public will see that the Zoom chat box and Q&A boxes are unavailable. Now we will conduct our attendance. At this time, I would like to request all members be unmuted, your microphones, so that you can respond for the attendance. We now have, as a note, we now have 15 members due to a member providing their resignation. When you hear your name called, respond with present or here. Joyce Ajay.
Present.
John Durkin.
John Deerking here.
Charles Cutshall.
Present.
Amy Holmes.
Here.
Kristen Honey.
Here.
Kirill Jerkomowski.
Present.
Ronald Kiefover.
Here.
Stephen Kuhl. He's absent. Janice Long.
Present.
Aid Abdullah. Absent. Susan Pestrocki.
Here.
Daniel Schumann.
Here.
Josh Tuber.
Here.
Bobby Tailbane.
Here.
Karina Turbs.
Here.
Thank you for your responses. We have a quorum, so we'll proceed by reviewing the agenda for today's meeting. On the agenda for today's meeting, we will have the Office of Government-Wide Policy Leadership to provide opening remarks. We will have a ceremonial swearing in of special government employees. We will have remarks from our chair, who will also do member introductions, and then we will have a review of our charter. We'll take a break, and then from there we will have the ethics overview and the Federal Advisory Committee Act overview. And then from there we will have a committee review and the OG-FAC bylaws and operations, a vote on the bylaws, and then closing remarks and do the adjournment, which will include the going over the agenda for the meeting on the 23rd. It is my distinct pleasure to extend a joyful welcome to all of our members and those who decided to join us to witness the first administrative meeting of the committee. As a point of reference, I will interchangeably refer to the committee as OG-FAC or committee. The Open Government Federal Advisory Committee's 15-member composition includes 11 special government employees, SGEs. SGEs are experts in their fields who serve on federal advisory committees, providing independent judgment based on their individual expertise. They are subject to conflict of interest laws and regulations. We have 4 regular government employees, RGEs. RGEs are federal civil officers, or employees appointed to serve on this committee. The purpose of the OG-FAC is to advise GSA on open government initiatives, including GSA's creation, implementation, and monitoring of the U.S. Open Government National Action Plans and commitments. Additionally, the OG-FAC will advise GSA's administrator on emerging open government issues, challenges, and opportunities, supporting the U.S. Open Government Secretariat. This is exciting stuff. The chair will be sharing more during his remarks. Before we get started, there are a few things you should know. As part of my role as the DFO, I manage the day-to-day administrative operations of the committee. I attend all committee meetings and ensure the committee operates in full compliance with the Federal Advisory Committee Act. Reminder for all OG-FAC members, please unmute yourself when it's your turn to speak and state your name to help the public identify who is speaking. If you like to ask a question or make a comment, use the raise hand feature by clicking the reactions box at the bottom of your screen and wait to be acknowledged before speaking. At this time, we will have welcoming remarks by Mehul Parekh. Turn it over to you, Mehul.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you for the introduction. I am the Acting Associate Administrator for the Office of Government-Wide Policy at GSA. And it is my honor to welcome all of you to the first administrative meeting of the Federal Open Government Advisory Committee. Today marks a significant step forward in our collective journey to enhance transparency, accountability, and public participation in government. I want to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to each of you for your commitment to this very important mission. Your expertise, insights, and diverse perspectives are critical to the success of this committee and the work we're about to undertake. As many of you know, open government is not just a policy initiative. It's a fundamental principle of how we should govern. It empowers citizens, strengthens democracy, and fosters trust between the public and government institutions. Open government makes information more accessible and processes more transparent, ensuring that the voices of the people are reflected in the policies and decisions that affect their daily lives. But we also know that achieving these ideals require more than just good intentions. It requires a deliberate and sustained effort to engage with the public, to break down silos across agencies, and ensure that the promises we make are translated into concrete, measurable outcomes. That's where this advisory committee comes in. You are here because we need fresh ideas, bold thinking, and a spirit of collaboration. Your mandate is to serve as an advisory body to the General Services Administration on open government initiatives, including GSA's creation, implementation, and monitoring of the U.S. government national action plans, and the themes of our open government commitments. The initial focus of this committee will be to provide advice to GSA on several very critical areas: the development of the 6th Open Government National Action Plan, the crafting of open government policy, and public engagement strategies. Further, this committee will play a key role in advising the GSA administrator on emerging open government issues, challenges, and opportunities, helping to ensure that GSA's Open Government Secretariat is well-positioned to meet its objectives. The work we'll do will help shape the future of how federal government approaches open government as a whole. Today, we'll begin by laying the groundwork for what I know will be a series of impactful conversations and actions. Together, we'll identify key challenges, key challenges ahead and explore opportunities to strengthen public engagement, improve access to government data, and create a more inclusive, transparent federal government. In particular, I hope we can focus on how we can build stronger partnerships with civil society, advance equitable access to government resources, and make government data more user-friendly for the public and communities that need it most. The task ahead is ambitious, and the stakes are very high, but I have complete faith in your ability to tackle the challenges ahead. Your collective experience and passion are precisely what's needed to drive the open government agenda forward. As we move beyond today's administrative meeting and begin our very important work, I encourage each of you to approach our discussions with openness and curiosity. Ask the tough questions, challenge assumptions, and don't shy away from exploring new and innovative ways to engage the public. And above all, keep the public's interest at heart of everything that we do. Thank you again for being here, and your dedication to this important cause is very, very important to us. I'm excited about the work we'll accomplish together. I look forward to partnering with each of you as we advance the Open Government Committee in ways that truly make a difference. With that, I would like to pass it back to Arthur, our designated federal officer. Arthur, thank you for the opportunity to open up the Federal Advisory Committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mahu, for those inspiring remarks and your remarkable leadership in the support of this challenging great work. At this time, we will prepare for our special government employees to participate in the ceremonial oath of office. Each member previously took the official oath and completed the necessary paperwork as part of their onboarding. I will now turn the meeting over to our HR specialist, Amari Daniels. Amari?
Yes, thank you. Hello, I'm Amari Daniels, the GSA Office of Human Resources Management representative. I'd like to ask each SGE member to please raise your right hand or place it over your heart. I will recite the oath of office in its entirety, and once I've finished, I'll ask you to affirm by saying I affirm in unison. Now, after that will be done. So let's get started. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. So you're all done. Thank you so much. And back to Arthur. Do you all affirm? Please say you affirm.
Yes.
I affirm.
Yeah,
I affirm.
I affirm.
I affirm.
Thank you so much. Now back to you, Arthur. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels. Next, we will have remarks by the OG FAC chair. I have worked with him for almost 2 months now doing preparatory work for this meeting, and I quickly learned that his resume is only a small snippet of his dedication, passion, and drive as it relates to simply getting the job done and the advancement of the open government. He is like all of the appointed members of this committee. He has a track record of actionable advocacy for changes that strengthen mechanisms for federal government accountability, transparency, and reform. And he does it all with a smile. It's my pleasure to pass the mic to the OG FAC chair, Mr. Daniel Schuman.
That's so thoughtful. Thank you, Arthur. Good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations and thank you for your willingness to serve on the inaugural Open Government Federal Advisory Committee. Thank you also to everyone at the Open Government Secretariat for all of your work here today. And a special thank you to Arthur Brunson, one of our committee's 2 designated federal officers, who has been a great support to all of us as we prepare to embark on this great adventure. Open government is fundamental to democracy. You can judge the health of our republic by how well it fosters government transparency, accountability, and public participation. Our government's commitment to these principles have waxed and waned over time, even as dedicated civil servants and civil society representatives have soldiered on. we are here to reinvigorate those commitments. Our job is to provide independent, expert recommendations to the federal government as it contemplates undertaking new commitments and strengthening old arrangements. We have the opportunity to provide these recommendations in the context of a newly formed instrument, the Open Government Federal Advisory Committee. This is a tremendous, if not unprecedented, opportunity. We should strive to be fearless. We should strive to be fair. Our charge is to provide timely recommendations to the GSA administrator on the development of the 6th Open Government National Action Plan and to provide our views on emerging open government issues, challenges, and opportunities. This is a lot of territory to cover. In the upcoming months, we will learn the lay of the land and receive advice and recommendations from people inside and outside the government. I will judge our success by the quality and utility of our recommendations, and by whether this Open Government Federal Advisory Committee, which we inaugurate today, becomes a lasting and productive nursery for good ideas and implemented practices that transform how our government serves its people. It is my pledge to all of you to foster a space where we can bring our best selves to the pursuit of a more perfect democracy. I'm excited for the work ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, Arthur, do you want to do this, or I can do this?
It's for you. It's for you to do. Thank you.
So, I got the chance to say my say, but I think it's good for us to hear from all of the members. But if we did that at length, this would be a 7-hour meeting. So we're going to do a short version, which is I'd like you to say your name, why you care about open government in a short snippet, if you can, and also a fun fact about yourself. We'll try to go through in alphabetical order by last name. I think we can sort that through the panelist list that you all should be able to see. And I'll model this. So my name is Daniel Schumann. Why open government is because it's fundamental to our democracy. And a fun fact is that I sit here, right here in my office. If I look to my right, there is a 12-foot tall inflated Pennywise intended to be ready for Halloween in just a handful of days. So let's go to the next person, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joyce Ajayi. I'm a lawyer and I work with the local government here. Why open government? From when I was a teenager, I've been working on good governance and government transparency. And it only makes sense that in my role right now in the community that I serve, I carry on that passion for public service and government transparency. Fun fact, I love to travel. I'm originally from Nigeria. I love exploring other parts of the world, and I love creating stories around that with my kids.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next person, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charles Cutshall, but almost everybody calls me Charlie. And why open government? Because open government is foundational to maintaining trust in government. And trust in government, as Daniel mentioned, is one of the pillars for a democracy. Fun fact about myself, I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. I love traveling, and today I am joining you from Montreal, or as they would say here, Montreal.
Wonderful. Thank you, Charlie. Glad that you can make it from Montreal. So next up is John.
Greetings, John Deerking. As was previously articulated, open government is foundational to our democracy, especially embracing the ideas of transparency, accountability, public participation, and increased civic engagement. Fun fact, by the time I was 10, I'd lived on 3 continents.
You're going to leave us hanging for what those continents were?
Well, North America, Europe, and Asia.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Uh, Next up is Amy.
Hello, everyone. Amy Holmes here. I am a little under the weather today, so please forgive me for not being on camera. I look forward to meeting you all next week. I have been working on open government and transparency work for over 20 years. It's what I think is most important to support our democracy. I also think that it's really important that in government and as a public servant for many years, that we put people at the center of everything we do. And I really want to bring that and hope we work on that as part of this opportunity. So I'm very happy to be with you all. And I also love to travel and I just got back from Mexico City. So I think that's why I'm a little under the weather. So thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful, Amy. Thank you. I hope that you feel better. Next up is Kristen.
Hello. I hope you all can see and hear me. I'm having tech problems, so I apologize. Hopefully we'll get that worked out. My connection to OpenGov, I'm the chief data scientist at HHS headquarters with the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health, currently on assignment to FDA. So why OpenGov? I came to open government through the open data community and really responsibly unleashing open data in a machine readable, easily discoverable way. And huge proponent of open science, so free public access to federally funded science, but not behind paywalls. And having good open data, I think open government is just absolutely foundational for all of that. And then in my day-to-day job, the kind of short mantra we often say to ourselves is people first, data always, building on what Amy said. And I think open government, especially today, really embodies that people first and hopefully transparent always. Fun fact about me, I have a high tolerance for risk. I dropped out of college after my sophomore year and went and taught English in Indonesia, backpacked around the world. I've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I've gone cage diving with great white sharks multiple times. I've bungee jumped Victoria Falls in Africa. So so I am open to new experiences and I like pushing boundaries, and hopefully that will help our open government community. Thanks.
Thank you. It seems like there's a lot of folks that are interested in travel, although Victoria Falls sounds like fun. Ron, please.
I am Ron Keepover, and the only people that call me Ronald that I can recall are my sixth grade classroom teachers. But my interest in open government actually, I can date that back to the eighth grade when my English instructor suggested that we needed a junior high school newspaper. So I was the first editor of the then only junior high newspaper, I think, in the city. But in any event, from that led to editor of the high school and the college, and then a 15-year stint as a journalist. And all of those have, only enforced my desire for open government. I left the journalism world and joined the administrative office at Kansas Supreme Court, where I immediately set about making court records and proceedings open to us. We wrote the first rule permitting cameras in the courtroom in Kansas, and that was back in 1981. That I turned to the judicial candidate interviews. They were appointed by the governor through a nominating commission. Those interviews had been closed, and even the names secret until they went to the governor. 3 went to the governor. I opened the brief bios of everybody applied and so on, so that we had open interviews of judges at all levels in the state. Meanwhile, based on the camera rule that we had, I had produced a video, or had a video produced about that topic, and that kind of sent me around the country talking about introducing cameras, which then led to kind of a speaker's bureau participation. I wound up presenting 22 international projects on open government and open courts in particular, and meeting with a 5-year stint as a Fulbright specialist, traveling around on dealing with the media and government in that particular case. My fun fact I could think of is I'm a certified master barbecue judge. So if anybody wants to have a barbecue, give me a call and I'll help you.
Well, I think you had a lot of fun facts, but the barbecue one is probably the most tasty. Thank you so much, Ron. So next up, Steve. Is this
Dr. Cole is absent.
Oh, he's absent. Okay. That's right. I should have realized that. Who's next? Oh, hello. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Janice Luong here. And I'm super excited to join this committee. Why open government? I mean, the work that I've done so far since higher education, since I graduated, has always been focused on exploring different recommendations and solutions on how to make government more effective and efficient. And why I'm so interested in this work is because I believe that I just remember like the frustration of how fragmented our society is, and I just crave that social cohesion. So not only do I believe that creating that social cohesion is a public responsibility, but I also think that creating an open government, making it more effective, plays a large role in it. So that is the main reason why I'm so interested and excited to be here. A fun fact about myself, this is the hardest question I've ever received, honestly, in an icebreaker. I'm short, but if you see me on the volleyball courts, you will see me play front row. Another fun fact is I can read Korean, but I will not know what it means. Like, I won't understand it, but I can read it. So I'll leave it there.
Those are both great fun facts. And if you want to suggest a different question for the next meeting, that is a little less hard, I would certainly love that. And the fun fact is I can read Hebrew, but I have no idea what it means either. Ade, you're up next.
So before it was my turn, I've been telling myself, hey, you're mute. Make sure when it's your turn, remember to turn mute button off before you start talking. And guess what happened? I still did the same thing. Anyway, thank you, everyone. My name is Ade Odutola. I am based there in the DC metro area. Guess the next question was why open government? I'm a contractor. I work for the DoD is one of my clients. And I'm into privacy and cybersecurity, and IT is what I've been doing for the last almost 30 years. And I've always wondered about the intersection of government being transparent, inclusive, responsive, and how can they be transparent and not jeopardize national security? So you want an open government, but there's also a national security component to it. How do you find that balance? How do you optimize? How can government be transparent, inclusive, and still protect its people? So that's what got me here. That's what excites me about this task. And I'm just so delighted to be part of this group. And I look forward to what we're going to accomplish together. In terms of fun fact, I ran the Army 10-miler last Sunday. And I've been running this 10-mile race for the last almost 14 years. And each time I tell myself it's the last time, you're getting old, but I still go back, and it's kind of addictive. Once September, once the registration comes around, I register and I still go out there. No matter how I'm feeling, I get on the course, and there are like 30,000 good friends of mine. We run together, and it's a lot of fun. And that's my fun fact. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, that's great. How are your I hope your knees are feeling all right after the 10K.
I hope so too. It's a 10. I too. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Ade. So Suzanne, you're up next, please.
Hello, hi, Suzanne Piotrowski. I am a professor at the School of Public Affairs in Rutgers, and I think maybe I sort of approach the issue of open government slightly differently. Sort of my role, I think of open government as a public sector management reform. And I think I'm going to answer a slightly different question, like why the FACA on open government? And I'm just really excited that maybe we can set up a successful working multi-stakeholder forum and get to co-creating a national action plan. My fun fact, I was trying to keep it on topic, so I don't know how fun it is, but I teach an MPA class called Unlocking Open Government.
I guess whether that's fun is we'd have to talk to your students, right? Thank you, Suzanne. Really appreciate it. Next up is Josh.
Hi, everybody. I wasn't going to say this, but Ron's remarks reminded me that I think I first got like the bite of sort of proto open government in third grade when I got to help edit the school's newspaper, and I never really got to have a career in journalism. But I think that's like trying to go back to like that third grade excitement of editing. I think is sticks with me. Most recently, so for the last 20 years, I've been running a website called GovTrack, which is a independent legislative branch transparency site where we track bills in Congress and legislators and create statistics and so on. And part of what I really enjoy about that is seeing non-professionals come to use government transparency to learn about the nuts and bolts of, in this case, of Congress, like cloture rules and discharge petitions are currently kind of interest to people. Anyway, I love I love seeing people learn these things and then become better advocates for themselves and feel more confident interacting with government. And a fun fact, I have a pet turtle and a toddler in that order.
Thank you, Josh. We can talk about Rupert, which is yes. Turtle, another time.
Anytime.
Awesome. Next, please, Corinna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Corinna Turbis with the Data Foundation. And I think why open government, it's hard to come up with something that someone hasn't already said, but I sort of grew up advocating for the federal statistical agencies and really had a culture of the public good that data can do, and bringing that spirit of public good to data as a whole, I think can be a really powerful way to treat government data. And the fun fact that I always tell people is that I spent most of my 20s working as a professional beekeeper. So if you all have any questions about bees or honey, let me know.
That's fantastic. So I'm seeing emerging themes of both food and travel. And I think a lot of people may have also been working on their school newspaper at one point. Thank you, Corinna. I appreciate it. Kirill.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Kirill Chekimovsky. I'm participating from my perch here at the U.S. Department of State. Why open government? I would say that we see that OpenGov is fundamental to a lot of the anti-corruption work that we're doing worldwide. The primary part of my portfolio is focused on anti-corruption, and I'm also the delegate to the U.S. On behalf of the U.S., the OECD's Working Party on Open Government, as well as all the other OGP work that I do. But as I said, we see it as fundamental to our AC work, and insofar as OpenGov helps to fill in these accountability and transparency gaps where corruption could otherwise flourish. It's also an important means of promoting and maintaining resilient democratic institutions worldwide, which is also a huge foreign policy priority for the administration. My fun fact is I played piano through high school and through college, but haven't played in a few years. But a few weeks ago, I bought a harpsichord, which was always something I'd been pining for as a piano player. And so I've been fiddling around with that, trying to relearn some of the old repertoire. So hopefully with the windows open, the neighbors are appreciative of the dulcet sounds of Bach, and they don't think that it sounds like nails on a chalkboard. So we'll see. Hopefully I'm not that rusty. So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something maybe to practice, particularly as we get closer to Halloween. I always found the action for the harpsichord, because it's plucking the strings and not banging out, like it's such an interesting experience.
Yeah, it's definitely spookier.
Yeah, it's really fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next up is Bobby.
Hi, everybody. Bobby, Bob actually, but I go by Bobby. I recently started to talk. And so really grateful and it's a pleasure to be here. Why open government? Well, I've been working in the space of freedom of information all but 2 years of a clerkship from my legal career. And it's been just a privilege to be able to work in this space. At OIP, we are responsible, among other things, for encouraging government-wide governance, encouraging government-wide compliance with the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, which of course is very critical to promoting open government and transparency and ensuring that citizens can engage with their governments fully knowledgeable of what government is doing. I've had the privilege during my time at OIP so far of working on developing and executing FOIA commitments and 3 national action plans. So I look forward to building on that with our colleagues here today. But somewhat related fun fact is my most prized possession in my office is the naturalization certificates of the 2 parents who immigrated here from a country where open government is the opposite of what their government believes in. And so that brings to my work at OIP, and I wanted to continue to work and be on the open government partnership. FACA, not a very fun fact, so I'm not doing FOIA. I really do enjoy actually cooking and especially barbecue, so I look forward to talking later on. But also just keeping up, trying to keep up with my 8-year-old twins. So they're the most exciting thing after FOIA. No, not after FOIA. Reverse that. But those are my things.
That's wonderful. At one point, you'll have to show off the certificate, and maybe we'll have to create a cooking and eating working group. I think that might be fun. A bunch of us have younger kids, so maybe a play date as well. Thank you, Bobby. So I don't need to, I already went because I provided the example at the beginning. So my fun fact is that I spoke with all of the members of the advisory committee before the meeting. That was fun for me. So next, I think I'm going to hand it back over to Arthur, and he's going to talk about the charter. Arthur, please.
Thank you, Dan, and all of the team members who shared your interesting facts as well as why open government. This is a great team, and I am looking forward to working with you. So thanks again, Daniel. As part of the charter review process, I will be highlighting a few areas of the charter. Please be reminded that the charter can be found on the GSA website, and all of the members have been provided a copy of the charter. Now let's get started. The OG-FAC is a discretionary advisory committee established by the administrator of the U.S. General Services Administration under agency authority in accordance with the provisions of the Federal Advisory Committee Act as amended. GSA's Open Government Secretariat is dedicated to fostering a more transparent, responsive, and inclusive federal government by creating regular channels for public engagement. We will work along with the OG-FAC, which will serve as the advisory body to GSA on open government initiatives, particularly focusing on the creation, implementation, and monitoring of the U.S. Open Government National Action Plans and related commitment themes. The themes include access to information, anti-corruption, civic space, climate and environment, digital governance, fiscal openness, gender and inclusion, justice, media freedom, public participation, and enhancing the delivery of government services and benefits. Initially, the OG-FAC will provide recommendations to GSA on developing NAP6, open government policy and public engagement strategies. The committee will advise GSA administrator on emerging open government challenges and opportunities, supporting GSA Open Government Secretariat in its mission. Support for the OG-FAC will be provided by the GSA's Office of Government-Wide Policy through the Open Government Secretariat. Public meetings, whether open or closed, may be held in person, via teleconference, virtually, or in a hybrid format. However, all meetings must be publicly announced at least 15 calendar days in advance through a notice published in the Federal Register. To meet this 15-day notice requirement, the DFO will need a minimum of 30 days lead time to draft, receive approval for, and submit the notice for publications. This means committee meetings cannot be scheduled or held on short notice. They require advanced planning. The OG fact will, one fact is that the OG fact will terminate 2 years from the date of the charter filing unless it is renewed prior to its expiration. However, GSA will assess the needs for this committee on an annual basis. The records of the committee, including any subgroups, will be managed in accordance with the general record schedule and other approved agency records disposition schedules. These records will be available for public inspection and copying in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act. And from there, I just want to ask, does any of the members have any questions on anything that was presented? So if there are no questions, I think it's time that we take. Go ahead.
Can we hold just a moment in case folks just don't know how to ask questions because this is a new medium? For your Zoom account, if you see the three little buttons, the ellipse that says more, if you click on that, it says raise hand at the bottom under the pop-up tab. So whether for this or at other appropriate times, should you have questions, and I don't think that there are any, but should you have questions, that is how you can signal that Arthur or whomever should call on you. But I think, Arthur, you're probably good. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss anybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. If there are no hands up, I think at this time we will pause for a 5-minute break. I have 1:43, which means we will come back at 1:48 and start. There's going to be a timer that you'll see on your screen as well. Thank you.
Arthur, I should have asked before, but who is controlling the slides?
Adam is, but if you say next slide, he'll take it.
Perfect. I can do that. Thank you. You just let me know when we're ready.
Daniel?
I think we're good to go.
I think we are. I'm unable to turn my video on, but that will probably fix in a second. There we go. Thank you. So welcome back. I hope everyone had a quick and refreshing break. Let's go ahead and get settled as we dive back into our agenda. Thanks for rejoining us. Next on the agenda, we will have our ethics training conducted by Lauren Jacobs. Lauren, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to GSA, and now I know what to call you, the OG FAC. My name is Lauren Jacobs. I'm a Senior Assistant General Counsel in GSA's Office of the General Counsel Technology Law Division, but I used to be the team lead for the Ethics Law Division as well, so I'm here helping them out today. And I know nobody asked for my fun fact, but I did want to share because there were some language examples in there that I have taught yoga for almost 20 years. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I studied Sanskrit during, during the shutdown when we were all quarantined at home. And I can say that I can neither read it nor can I understand it, but I tried. With that, I'm going to focus now on ethics, tried to bring a little humor in when I can, although as you can already tell, it may not always be funny, and just keep you all awake for about the next 29 minutes or so. Now, this ethics briefing is specific to those of you who are SGEs, special government employees. So as SGEs, you're legally required to receive new entrant ethics training before the first meeting of the committee. I'm thinking that my colleague, if you're here, if you can wave, Caroline, my colleague, Caroline Bellison, was going to try to join, but she may not be on yet. But just so that everyone is aware, for those of you who are SGEs, if you need ethics advice, you can reach out to ethics@gsa.gov, and I'm going to put their email address in the chat here. And then those of you who are SGEs are also more than welcome to reach out to me or Caroline. Every attorney in our Office of the General Counsel is an ethics advisor. So if you have questions about these rules, you can also reach out to us. And then for those of you who are employees of other government agencies, of course, your agency ethics officials should be your go-to. Although if something comes up where it's appropriate for them to work with us, we're more than happy to work with them as well. One more thing, after I'm done with this, I'm going to send you all what we call the Form 2160, send it through DocuSign. And for SGEs, we just need you to sign that and acknowledge that you received this briefing today. Next slide, please. So the Ethics Law Division, the one that I don't actually work for anymore, they are, again, your first line of defense if you have ethics questions. And they're the agency's full-time ethics attorneys. They do all the stuff that's listed here. And I highlight advice and counsel because that's really the heart of their job, particularly as it's going to relate to you. It's all about helping you understand how all of the ethics rules that I'm about to discuss apply to you. We've got a short amount of time to get through all the material today, but if you have questions that we don't get to, and I will ask you to hold your questions for the end unless it's a clarifying question. If we don't get through questions that you do have or you do want to discuss something further, please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, it's either ethics@gsa.gov, the email I put in the chat, or the GSA folks can help you to reach out to me or Caroline. Next slide, please. So as I already mentioned, and this 30-minute briefing has a lot of repetition in it, as SGEs, you're legally required to receive new ethics entrant training before the first meeting of the FAC. So just knowing that, and to frame our conversation today, I want to have you all think about, why does ethics matter? Why is ethics so important that we're required to talk to you about it on your first day here before you can even start your work as a committee? And I'll just pause and let you all think about that just for a second. Now, whatever your answer is, or if you don't have an answer yet, we can hopefully either create a foundation today or help you to build on it as we go through today's training. The Office of Government Ethics is the agency that actually leads the executive branch ethics program. And I've put an excerpt here of what they say is the most fundamental principle of ethics. And that is that public service is a public trust. Working for the government comes with the responsibility of safeguarding the public's trust in the programs that they fund and ensuring that you're doing your jobs faithfully. And I almost have to laugh that I'm saying this to all of you, but that you're doing your jobs transparently. Next slide, please. So how does that matter to all of you? Most of you joined the FAC as special government employees, I believe, but there are quite a few who are already government employees. And those of you who are SGEs, you are considered federal employees under the ethics rules. That said, you are separate and distinct from the regular government employee members and representatives. So some of the rules that I'm going to talk about today are less restrictive for you than they are for regular government employees. Some are only less restrictive if you serve a certain number of days. So there's some counting involved. Just want to make sure you have the general idea. And then again, if you have questions, we're more than willing to help you to work through them when it applies to counting days or just anything in general. So again, you're considered federal employees for the purposes of the ethics rules. That includes the criminal conflict of interest statutes, the employee standards of ethical conduct. I'll share these materials with you all afterwards as well. The Hatch Act, those are the rules related to your partisan political activities, and the Foreign Gifts and Decorations Act. And so these rules apply to you 24/7, except for when they don't. Some of the Hatch Act rules, for example, only apply to you when you're actually on duty, when you're actually doing government work or in a government building, or wearing some sort of government insignia that demonstrates that you are a government employee or a GSA employee. So 2 quick questions for you, just to make sure everybody's awake. Do these rules apply to you whether you're paid or not? Yes or no? Anyone want to type in the chat? Just making sure you're with me. Do these rules apply to you whether or not you're paid? Correct. Yes, they apply to you whether or not you're paid. And do they apply to you on days when you don't perform government services? Do they apply to you on days when you don't perform government services? So they largely do apply to you on days when you don't provide government services. Some exceptions there, but just want you to be generally aware of that. Speaking of, my goal here is really just to make sure you're generally aware of what these rules are. You're not expected to memorize them. You're not expected to be your own ethics attorney. The idea is that you'll hopefully leave this briefing knowing enough that you would know when to reach out to the Ethics Law Division or when to reach out to me or to Caroline. And with that, next slide, please. And this slide is hopefully going to give you enough to just give you that gut instinct of, oh, I should probably reach out to an ethics official. What this slide does is summarizes the 14 principles of ethical conduct. The 14 principles of ethical conduct are your basic ethical obligations as a public servant. And we usually begin our trainings with a discussion of these principles. They're great to have as a reference. I will share them with you. They are the foundation of the government ethics rules, but we also just want to make it even easier for you to identify potential ethics issues and not have to memorize 14 different principles. So we summarize these 14 principles and categorize them into 3 buckets. Actually, the Office of Government Ethics did that for us. And whenever you take an action, whether it's in your official GSA capacity, you're wearing that government hat or not, make sure that you're doing these 3 things. Make sure that you're being loyal to the law. So whether that means following all of these ethics rules, or it means paying your debts and your parking tickets on time, got to be loyal to the law. The second one is to serve the federal government selflessly. That idea that public service is a public trust. So you want to make sure that you're not using your public office, your position on this committee for your private gain, your outside organization's gain, but also just anybody else's gain, any other non-federal entity's gain. And then last but not least, please be good stewards of government resources. When you're on government time, right? When you're on committee time, you're doing committee work. When you are on your own time, you're doing your own stuff. Make sure that if you have any sort of government property, government devices, things like that, that you're only using those in connection with committee work as well. And that you're not sharing non-public government information. Of course, you want to be transparent. It's what a lot of this is all about, but make sure that you're not sharing information that is not yet public. You also want to avoid just even the appearance of violating these principles. Even if it just feels like or looks like you're violating them, you want to avoid that as well. Next slide, please. This used to be one of my favorite slides, my favorite images. If you can't tell, because I'm kind of covered by words, this woman is just standing here in business attire, wearing several different hats, all stacked on top of each other. And what this is getting at is that the federal ethics rules really require you to think about your lives and your work in a way, and to be able to separate them into 2 capacities. You have your official hat, and I think I have one here. I usually use this as my official. This is my doing GSA work hat. If any of you can kind of see me now, I'm not even sure if you can. But there's your official hat, your government capacity, and then there's everything else. There's all the other hats that you wear. Don't ask me why my other example is a Paw Patrol sunglasses thing, but that's what I've got. So you want to be able to separate out what you're doing on behalf of the government versus everything else. A good thing to consider is what you might be doing in each of these capacities after today, and identify situations where you foresee any sort of overlap between what you're doing officially for the government versus what you do outside of the government. And anywhere where you foresee any sort of overlap, a potential area for conflict, that's a good time to reach out to me, to Caroline, or the Ethics Law Division to just say, hey, I've got this overlap, and then we can help you to understand if there is an actual ethics issue, and if there is, how do we separate out those 2 circles, or how do we make sure you're not wearing 2 hats at once? That's the general idea, at least. Next slide, please. So we're going to jump into a review of the rules now. We're not going to do an official reading of the rules because, again, I will provide you with summaries of all of those rules, and you are required to read those, but kind of just the general concepts right now. So I want to start with a disclaimer. I mentioned this earlier. Many of these statutes make at least some special provision for the treatment of special government employees. In 30 minutes, we don't have time to cover all of those. So the takeaway should be, when in doubt, ask ethics. But I will share with you a legal advisory that talks a little bit about what those differences are as well. So the bottom line with the first set of rules we're going over, those are the financial conflict of interest rules. The bottom line here is that you really don't want your wallet to affect your work. So the criminal conflict of interest statute prohibits you from working on certain matters for the OG-FAC that will affect your financial interests or the financial interests of certain others. Those certain others are the ones that are listed here. Those are the interests of your spouse, your minor child. If you're an officer, director, you have some sort of fiduciary role with an organization, with your outside employer. Those would also be what we call those certain other interests, those that are imputed to you. So I like to visualize this the way that the graphic is on the screen. You've got your FAC duties, everything you're doing for the committee, and then you also have all of those other outside financial interests. If there's any crossover between the two, it doesn't automatically mean that there's a conflict, but it means that there could be. The best practice here is if there's any crossover, reach out to us. This is a criminal statute, so violating this rule could result in hefty fines. It could result potentially in jail time. So the best thing to do is just make sure that if there's an issue, you're deconflicting yourself or separating out these two circles and that you don't have a problem. Just add a note that for SGEs, you typically have substantial outside employment and other interests. I was about to say other issues, but other interests. They're often related to the subject area for which the government desires your services. So these kinds of issues do come up often for you. All right, next slide, please. So here's just a list of possible financial conflicts, kinds of things that you might see with those two circles I had on the other slide. Your stock ownership could be an issue if you have over a certain amount of money in stocks, bonds, interest through ownership, partnership, limited liability corporations, consulting agreements, grants or contracts that you might have. And then again, as I previously mentioned, your employment outside of the government could be an area of possible conflict. There are, for those of you who are SGEs, there's an additional option of a waiver for FACA committee members in certain circumstances. Those of us who are regular full-time government employees are probably saying, I've never heard of anyone getting a waiver for this rule, but it's a little more lenient when it comes to SGEs, just so you're aware. So it's not the end of the world necessarily if you have a conflict. We just need to know about it before you take any action. All right, next slide. So in my former life as a full-time ethics official, people would come to me and say, oh my goodness, I think I have a criminal conflict. And then as we kind of peel back the layers, we'd realize that there actually wasn't one. But even when there wasn't one, sometimes there was still an impartiality concern or appearance concerns under the impartiality regulations. So there are these regulations, they're not criminal, related to impartiality in the performance of official duties in the employee standards of conduct. And the regulations are similar to the criminal conflict rule, but they deal with less direct relationships. And again, they also consider appearances. So like we said at the beginning today, what we want to prevent is you're violating these ethics principles and also the appearance of violating these ethics principles. So anytime that you're working on committee duties or you realize that your committee duties somehow intersect with the financial interests of a member of your household, so that's not just the spouse or dependent children, but if you have roommates, for example, or maybe you live, I don't know, with an aunt or an uncle or a grandma, household members' financial interests matter here. Or if there's some sort of crossover between your committee duties and someone with whom you have a covered relationship, or who represents a party in a GSA matter, that could be an issue as well. So covered relationships could also be your previous employer within the last year. If you have been employed by someone else within the last year, it could also be someone with whom you have a close personal relationship, things like that. Any folks where you have that an outside relationship or a business relationship could be an issue here. So all that we're asking you to do is whenever there's crossover between what you're doing with the committee and your outside relationships, that before you take any action with the committee related to that outside person or organization, that you just stop and reach out to the Ethics Law Division, to ethics@gsa.gov, or to me or Caroline. We're pretty quick when we need to be, and we can just help you to remedy the situation if it even needs remedying, or send you underway knowing that it is okay. Next slide, please. Now, you might be saying, maybe not, but you might be saying, how do I know whether there's an appearance concern? I mentioned even when there's not an outright conflict, or even when there's no FACA work that meets the criteria that is necessary and outside relationship that crossover, even if something just doesn't look good, doesn't smell right, that can also be an issue. And how do you know whether something's an appearance concern? So appearance concerns, they use a reasonable person standard. It's like every lawyer's least favorite phrase, or at least it's mine. So it's not like someone who knows you and knows your personality and your character looking at your situation. It's someone who's just looking at, well, what do you do for the committee, and what are these outside relationships, deciding, is there an issue here? So this reasonable person standard, first thing that I suggest doing is that if you consider yourself a reasonable person, you just do a little gut check. If you're about to do something and you think, this probably wouldn't look great if it showed up on the news or on social media platforms. This, people might say that I'm using my public office for private gain. Then it's probably not a great idea. So you could just not do the thing if that's possible, or again, you just reach out to us. But always take appearances into account. What would it look like if whatever you're going to do showed up on the news or showed up on social media? Do you think that would create public controversy for GSA, for the government? And if it would, let us see if there's a way that we can avoid it or remedy the situation. One last thing I'll say about the impartiality rules is there is something called an authorization. So GSA could authorize you to do something even if it would cause someone to question your integrity or impartiality, even if it would create an appearance concern. They can say, you know what, as long as it doesn't violate the criminal statute, we really need this person's expertise, and so we're going to authorize them to do it anyway, just so that you're aware that is also something that exists. We are almost there. Next slide, please. So next up are restrictions on your representational activities. The basic idea here is that, with some exception, you cannot represent a third party in communications back to the federal government, whether you're being paid or not paid to do that. SGEs are prohibited from receiving compensation for the representation of anyone before any agency or a court of the federal government on a particular matter involving specific parties. Those are things like contracts, grants, investigations, that the SGE personally and substantially participated in as an employee. That's like a lot of words, and all those words have definitions. It's kind of like the elements of a crime, because it is a criminal statute, and all of these things need to be in place for there to actually be an issue. There's also further restrictions on those SGEs who are serving more than 60 days. So what I suggest is, if you are in a position with your work outside of GSA or otherwise, where you're planning to make communications to the federal government, again, whether that be to get something like a grant from the federal government or helping your organization with an application for something, just reach out to us first, and we can make sure that you're steering clear of this criminal law. Next slide, please. Escaping from the criminal laws, we're back to the land of regulation. There are no criminal penalties to violating this rule, but of course, it's also important to understand it and ensure that you're not violating it. this rule, or these rules, I should say, are the rules on. So this relates back to one of those core ethics principles that you cannot use your public office for private gain. And basically, that's the general overarching principle. And then the rules say, hey, here are some examples of things that you can't do related to making sure that you're not using your public office for private gain. But it's not an exhaustive list. One of those things is don't use non-public information. You cannot make financial transactions using non-public information or allow improper use of non-public information to further your private interests or to further the interests of someone else. Don't use government property or official for your personal time, for your personal work, or your work outside of GSA. And then underneath that general use of public office for private gain, what we're also talking about is making sure that you don't, it doesn't seem like the government is endorsing your outside interests or any outside interests. Both actually endorsing or implied endorsement are a no-no. So in your government hat, you can make factual statements about outside entities, but you don't want to say anything subjective about like maybe, I don't know, one organization being like more fantastic than another, or doing a great job with something even. You want to keep everything pretty factual when you're talking about outside organizations. Make sure that you are not endorsing them when you have that government hat on, and that you're not doing anything with your government hat that creates the appearance that the government sanctions some outside product, service, organization. Next slide, please. We're also in the world of regulation, not in the criminal statutes here. There are regulations on being paid for teaching, speaking, and writing that relate to your official duties. It's very specific, right? You have to be paid for teaching, speaking, or writing, and it has to relate to your official duties for it to be a problem. And then there's also an exemption for teaching that is part of the regularly established curriculum of an institution of higher education. So you're able to do that even if you're being paid for it, and even if it relates to your GSA duties, to the committee duties. Now, oftentimes under this rule, you actually end up perfectly fine, because related to your official duties, usually something does not seem related if it's based on expertise that you already had before you joined the committee. So this isn't a rule to panic about, but it is something to just be aware of. Also on this slide, we're talking about no endorsement or appearance of government sanction, which I already went over. And then one last thing is that there is, related to misuse of position, there is a prohibition on promoting personal interests at work. So I heard one of you talk about the Army 10-miler. I have a similar problem with the Marine Corps Marathon. And one year I couldn't get into the marathon, so I ran New York City on behalf of the New York Marathon on behalf of a charity. I had to raise a lot of money, right? I had to do a lot of fundraising to be part of a charity team. If that kind of thing comes up, you can't ask other committee members to donate to your fee and discount, that sort of thing. Just make sure you're not promoting your personal interests with the committee members. I see that my internet connection is unstable. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Yes, Lauren.
Okay. Phew, we are almost there. Next slide, please. It bubbled for a moment. Okay. Phew. So close. Gifts from outside sources. The general rule here is that you should not accept gifts from, and by outside sources, we mean sources that are not other, not from the government, not from the federal government, You should not accept gifts based on your official committee position. And you should also not accept gifts from prohibited sources. Prohibited sources, they're going to be anybody who does business with GSA or trying to do business with GSA. That's kind of the general idea there. GSA has like a contract with everyone and their mother, right? We have a lot of vendors just based on the work that we do. So vendors are a good example of prohibited sources. We use a lot of contractors. So you generally cannot accept gifts from them or other prohibited sources. That said, there's a laundry list of exclusions to the gift rule and exceptions to the gift rules. So one good example is gifts that are based on your outside business relationships. So if you're receiving a gift from somebody who does business with GSA, but the only reason you're getting that gift is because you work with them outside of GSA or your spouse perhaps works with them, then you're generally okay. Because there's such a laundry list of exceptions, though, I just encourage you to, again, I'm going to say it, reach out to the Ethics Law Division or me or Caroline, and we can help walk you through these rules and make sure that you don't have any issues. Hopefully this goes without saying, but also please don't accept any bribes or illegal gratuities. This was an issue at my previous agency. I haven't seen anything happen here, but accepting bribes or illegal gratuities in exchange for an official act, that's a crime. So don't do that. Next slide, please. It is the second to last one. It's really the last one. The last thing I want to talk to you about today is the Hatch Act. Again, those are the rules regarding your partisan political activities. I know we are almost at the presidential election time, so just want to make sure that you are crystal clear on this between now and then, but even after them. What the Hatch Act does is it restricts certain political activities of federal government employees. That includes SGEs when you're engaged in government business. For SGEs, the Hatch Act only applies when you are on duty, when you're doing committee work, when you're doing OG FAC work. So when you're on duty, those are the days that the days that you perform their like counted work as an SGE. I talked about those like 60 days of work. There's a certain number of days that you can total work as an SGE. I think there are rules to get around that, but like if you are doing work in the morning, that day is considered a duty day. Partisan political activity, that's going to encompass any activity directed toward the success or failure of a political party, candidate for partisan political office, or partisan political group. The definition is very broad, and I want anyone who's a social media user to just be careful with social media because it includes something as simple as liking, resharing something, tweeting, retweeting, we still say tweeting and retweeting for X, even sometimes commenting on someone's post if that post happens to be partisan political activity, something aimed at the success or failure of political parties, candidates for partisan political office, or partisan political groups, if there's something related to fundraising. So you just want to make sure if you're doing committee work that you're not on social media just kind of liking your friends or family's stuff and accidentally violating the Hatch Act. A lot of people forget that the Hatch Act doesn't just cover candidates, it also covers political parties. So keep that in mind as well. What it doesn't cover like those policy issues that tend to be associated with one party or another. I just caution you if you're talking about those types of issues that tend to be aligned with one party or another, that you're really careful that your comments don't cross over the line to be construed as aimed at the success or failure of a partisan political candidate, party, or a partisan political group. I think I forgot to hit the reset button on my timer, so I think that I have gone over time or just about there. The last slide right here is just a reminder that you can reach out to ethics@gsa.gov. So if you go to that last slide. And then I also just wanted to remind everyone that they can reach out to me or Caroline if you have any questions about these rules. Last but not least, I will send you summaries of these rules so that you can actually read the rules themselves. And I will be sending all of you, I'll try to only send it to the SGEs, but if you provided a non-government email address, you'll probably get it anyway. I'll send all of you that form through DocuSign, which you need to sign just to acknowledge that you received this rambling message from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren. I just want to confirm before we move to the Federal Advisory Committee Act training that there weren't any questions, no hands raised for Lauren.
I'm still here if there are.
Okay. So next on our agenda, we'll have the Federal Advisory Committee Act overview. Will be conducted by Jeremy Anderson. And Jeremy, I'll send it over to you. He's our FACA attorney.
Thank you. Happy to be here with you all. My name is Jeremy Anderson, and I'm actually in my first year as the FACA attorney here at GSA. I have a bit of kinship with what you do. Prior to that, for the last decade or so, I was an information access attorney for the federal government. And so my fun fact is, as a FOIA attorney, I actually got to put together a denial letter one time that says, "We're sorry, your records don't exist because they're blown up by a 107 millimeter Katyusha rocket." The rockets were in a container in Iraq and were destroyed. So not a lot of FOIA attorneys have been able to write a letter like that. That's my fun participation in open government, or at least unique. I don't know that it's fun. I'm going to go to the next slide. Well, it looks a little different than how I had it. All right, so hey, the federal government has, since the very beginning, needed to get the best advice that it could to govern well. The very first Federal Advisory Committee, or something that we would recognize as one, was actually formed by President Washington in response to the Whiskey Rebellion. So this is something that's been going on for a long time. Frequently, the federal government needs to get outside advice. But at the same time, the public has a right to know who's influencing that advice and who's influencing decision-making. And so in the 1972, they established the Federal Advisory Committee Act. That rule's been amended a few times since then. And there are future amendments that seem likely to pass. They've passed in the House or in the Senate before, but haven't made it through. But other laws apply as well. For example, the Sunshine Act, and Arthur kind of touched on briefly an interplay between FOIA and the Federal Advisory Committee Act that I'll touch on a little bit late here in a second. But we're kind of breezing through this. Our committee management people here at GSA that run the FACA Secretariat are a wealth of information knowledge, and so Arthur and his team have a lot of great resources to help as you have questions about how this goes forward. No other agency in the government is as well equipped as GSA is to address questions about the FACA. Next slide. So what actually is a Federal Advisory Committee Act, or when does it apply? Well, there's three things that need to be present. First of all, the group has to include some non-federal members, which we have here. And then the group has to provide consensus advice. Now, consensus advice doesn't necessarily mean what most people think of when they think of consensus advice. You don't all have to completely agree on everything that you put forward as to advice. Sometimes federal advisory committees publish minority opinions, or sometimes they have disagreements with them. It doesn't mean that the advice you reach has to be unanimous at all time. It's not that type of consensus. And then there has to be some level of federal government exercise of control over the group. Obviously, that's the case here. An example where that doesn't apply is federal government gets outside advice when it comes to appointing judges from the ABA. ABA goes and gives recommendations about judges, and the court said, hey, that's not a federal advisory committee because the federal government doesn't control the ABA, and therefore FACA rules do not apply to that. And so next slide. By the way, we also have on here on the call our committee management officer, Mackenzie Robertson, and I've sent her a message encouraging her to A, heckle, and then B, jump in as I miss anything. And so the fact that she hasn't heckled yet means I haven't done anything too egregiously wrong yet. But we'll get there. I'm sure we'll get there. All right. So as I was alluding to before, GSA has got the expertise on FACA. The GSA is assigned to monitor committee management activities. We do the annual reviews. We help agencies establish and renew committees, and we maintain a database. If you want to know about other advocacy committees that are out there, we've got a database. There's just under 1,000 of them last I saw, and we have information about each of them. There's mandatory fields and some voluntary fields, but we have a great deal of information about all of those. And just like all those, this committee's information is going to be findable there. If you just Google GSA FACA database, it comes up as the first hit usually, and you should be able to then go and pull up and see what information we're initially just putting out there. And then, of course, GSA is going to we're going to have a website for the committee, and more information is going to be there because our whole reason to be here is about government transparency. And so that's going to be key in how we carry these things forward. But just to know that Arthur's got a great support team, and we're all here to help you be successful in what you're doing. So how does one form a FACA? Well, there's a couple different ways that they can be created. Next slide, please. Sorry. So some are created by executive order. The president says, I want to create a advisory committee on, and one that was housed here in GSA was related to election integrity during the previous administration. That was formed at GSA by executive order, and it did some looking into that issue, but then eventually was sunset. Then it could be done by statute. Some laws, some agencies are ordered by statute to create one. One that's like that at GSA, we've got an advisory committee related to secure cloud things. I don't know what that means other than it's computers, and I couldn't tell you. But some of them are created that way. And then some of them are just done by the discretionary authority that exists within an agency. And that's what took place here, is that the administrator of GSA, Robin Carnahan, signed the order creating this committee. And so this is a discretionary committee rather than a mandatory committee. So who's involved in these? Well, you all are involved, right? We've got federal employees, we've got SGEs, and you can have representatives. And each of those people is going to have different rules. You're very worried about conflicts of interest when it comes to SGEs, but not as much necessarily when it comes to representatives, because sometimes they're brought in as a representative of another organization specifically to provide a different viewpoint. That's why they exist. I don't know what conflicts can exist with the concept of open governance, but we can bring people in to provide a different perspective and to help us see things potentially in new ways and different lights. So as we have who's going to be members of it, it's created in this case by the order of the General Services Administration Administrator. And so how is it created? Well, they file a charter, and that charter isn't just here at GSA. These things are sent to Congress, and to the Library of Congress. They ask for 7 copies in the statute or in the previous regulations, but they actually don't need that many. And then we have to provide lots of information about these committees and what they're doing. And this is going to be stuff that's done by Arthur and the administrative staff that is supporting him. But we have to keep track of costs, meeting frequency, and information about what we're doing before we even get started. And then there's reporting that has to be done as we move along. So next slide, please. So when it comes to FACA meetings and record requirements, first of all, so as a general rule, advisory committee meetings are noticed and open to the public. In the previous statements, they say that they have to be. That's not necessarily the case because for every rule, there's always exceptions. But we go and put out a notice in the Federal Register telling the public how they can attend, whether it's virtually or in person. And then we make an effort to make those meetings accessible to all those involved. As we talk through the various types of interactions through the community life, again, keep in mind that many of the requirements are based on that concept of providing transparency. That's what we're here. Anything we do in the government, I think, needs to be fact, fair, accountable, and transparent. FAT. And as we strive and we make those objectives, then we're doing what this committee is set out to be. During the meetings, the chairperson runs the meeting according to an established agenda. The DFO, which in this case is Arthur, should provide opening remarks at the start of each advisory committee, and subcommittee meetings start stating the meeting is subject to the FACA requirements, and for ethical purposes, whether the membership is made up of SGEs, RGEs, representatives, or a combination of the threes, and if members were reviewed for conflicts of interest. For in-person meetings, the DFO should sit next to the chairperson or co-chairperson at the table and monitor the actions for FACA compliance and confer with the chairperson or co-chairperson and assist the advisory committee or subcommittee as necessary during the meetings. Committee members are expected to engage and participate. The chairperson and co-chairperson, along with the DFO, should foster a culture of diversity, equity, inclusion by encouraging engagement, participation, and expression from all advisory committee and subcommittee members and any members with dissenting opinions as applicable. In addition to diversity, equity, and inclusion, accessibility is key and obviously important, as you can see from our hardworking ASL interpreters. Thank you very much for that hard work. Translation, simultaneous translation is very, very hard. I've done it with English to Brazilian Portuguese, and I nearly break my brain every time I try. So thank you to them. Committee members, so if a meeting is webcast, we need to ensure that it's clear who is speaking, and remember that video is going to be posted on the committee website. Sometimes people forget that and don't act as if they remember that things are being recorded. Please, as we move forward with the committee, keep that in mind. You know, these comments that people make and sometimes intend to make to just one person end up being seen by everybody, and nobody wants to embarrass themselves, their agency, or the OG-FAC. Between meetings, a quorum of committee members should not meet either in person, virtually, by teleconference, over email, or other electronic means to discuss substantive issues. This could be considered a meeting under the FACA, and it would violate the act if the public is not involved. This includes exchanging substantive emails among a quorum of the committee or the full committee. So when you get something via email about a committee, pro tip, don't reply to all with substantive matters. Now, there is debate and healthy debate about what's the different line between an administrative and a substantive matter. And if you go and find a group of 5 attorneys and you ask them, give them a fact scenario and ask them to analyze, is this an administrative or a substantive issue? How many opinions are you going to get from those 5 attorneys? And the answer is, anybody want to guess in the chat? The right answer is 6, at least, right? So the foot stomp thing there is, if you have a question, hey, is this going to cross the line into a substantive matter? Ask first before replying to all. Because it's tough to put the toothpaste back into the tube. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, and you can't unsend a reply all email. In all substantive work, please include the DFO, regardless of format. For example, include them on calls, copy them on emails, and make sure they're aware of the activities and what you're doing. When it comes to public and press interactions, can we go back to the previous slide, please? When referring to your membership status on the committee, you can mention it in your bios and your CVs. You can put it on LinkedIn, but it shouldn't be given any more importance than any of your other affiliations. Please notify your DFO if you receive a request related to the committee and the nature of it. Committee members should provide a disclaimer at the start of any interviews that they are only speaking in their individual capacity and are not speaking on behalf of the committee or on behalf of GSA. Committee members should only speak about topics that they've discussed during the public meetings. Information that is not public should not be discussed. And then, as a general rule of thumb, is to just discuss what is available on the website when it comes to talking about the work of the committee. And then point to the website in public meetings if asked about the committee's opinions or thoughts, because those should be able to inform people as to what we are thinking on things. So we do have a committee website, FACA database. The committee has a website managed by the DFO, and there's going to be publicly available FACA database. Then there's also the publicly available FACA database, which I mentioned earlier, which is maintained by GSA, which will list you as a member of the committee. And the database will include information, including committee membership costs for every chartered committee in the executive branch. And there's a record in that database for the committee. Your DFO will keep this record up to date throughout the lifetime of the committee. Since this is a committee about open governance, the next part should be, the most exciting part to all of you, and that is Rule 10B or Section 10B. This is a section in the public law. So if you look in the United States Code, you're not going to find it under 10B. It's moved around in the United States Code a couple of times. It used to be the appendix. Now it starts in 5 U.S.C. 1001 and following. But in the public law sections, Section 10B states that records, reports, transcripts, minutes, appendices, working papers, draft studies, agendas, other documents which are made available to or prepared by each advisory committee shall be made available for the inspection and copying until the advisory committee ceases to exist. So I just listed through what's available to the public: reports, transcripts, minutes, those agendas, but drafts. They are generally made available for public inspection and copying to the advisory committee's offices or the agency it reports to. But also, a lot of federal advisory committees just put them on their website. That's the easiest way to make things available. Not everything that a federal advisory committee does is going to be accessible under the 10B rules. Records that are exempt under the Freedom of Information Act may not be available to the public. However, everybody's favorite FOIA exemption, FOIA Exemption 5, cannot be used to withhold documents that reflect the committee's internal deliberations. So, and I know that's a popular topic in the world of open governance, as the availability of deliberative material and the extent to which that should be withheld. Doesn't apply here in this case. Those internal deliberation information, if they meet that record, those definitions of records that have to be released, then we can't withhold it under exemption 5. Each committee is going to have a public-facing website that contains that information. So anyway, next, and then the final bullet there, things like classified, PII, proprietary info, we're not going to release. I don't know if that's going to be the case with this committee, but for all federal advisory committees, those things can be withheld. All right, so committee roles. Who are the key players in this? We've kind of touched on this a bit. The first part is the committee members. That's you guys. That's all of you who are appointed to serve specific roles on the committees. Some appointments, as Lauren has said earlier, are subject to ethic and conflict of interest laws and regulations. You should refer back to your appointment letter for specific membership designation and for your appointment term. Not all people are appointed for the same length of time. That is often particularly the case when a new committee is started, so that you don't sign everybody up for 2 years and then lose the whole committee 2 years later. Sometimes in committees, people are signed up for that staggered terms so that we can replace people and keep some of that corporate knowledge within the committee as it moves forward. Your letter should identify you as a regular government employee, a Fed who's giving their agency expertise, a special government employee who's going to provide individual expertise, or a representative member where you represent a group or point of view. As a member, you're expected to attend and participate in committee meetings and any subcommittee meetings you are appointed to, and you refer to the committee bylaws for more information about how that is done. Within the committee membership is the chairperson role. The chair is the committee leader and is responsible for coordinating with the committee membership and the DFO regarding technical aspects of the committee work. The chair runs public meetings according to a pre-approved agenda and keeps committee members focused on areas relevant to accomplishing the committee charge. The chair typically moderates the meetings and determines when comments are not relevant, when it's time to end the discussion, when a topic should be assigned for further consideration, or when discussion should be tabled until the next meeting. The chair also certifies meeting minutes and coordinates the final work products for submission to the agency receiving the committee's advice. Next, we have the DFO, the designated federal official. The DFO is your central point of contact for all things related to the committee. The DFO's primary role is to ensure that the committee and its meetings comply with the FACA. It is important for you to work very closely with your DFO to ensure FACA compliance and to assist you in any way you need to do the work of the committee. The DFO also serves as a liaison between the committee and GSA. All communications, including verbal and email between the committee and GSA, should go through the DFO. The purpose is to ensure that the committee maintains its independence. Committee members should also copy the DFO on all of their communications. Arthur, you're going to be getting a lot of emails. The DFO is also responsible for the day-to-day operations and management of the advisory committee, which includes drafting meeting agendas and distributing materials to the advisory committee, preparing Federal Register notices, announcing public conference calls and meetings, attending conference calls and meetings, keeping records of the committee and deliberation, making committee materials and minutes available to the public, ensuring all of advisory committee members have logistical information necessary to attend the meetings, whether that's hotel and meeting locations or the Zoom link, and receiving and distributing public comments to the committee members. The DFO is also your point of contact for any needs during all public meetings. And then this was written on all caps in the notes that I got from my predecessor. I'll agree with it. Be nice to your DFO. They're going to help you and they're going to help make this successful. Committee staff are there to support committee activities and can provide background materials and answer committee technical questions. What committee staff cannot do is work collaboratively with the committee on their work products. FACA requires committees to provide independent advice and not to work with agency staff to generate a solution to a problem. Staff also cannot provide feedback on the committee's proposed recommendations before they are finalized by the committee and transmitted to FACA, or transmitted to GSA. So to recap, under the FACA, there are committee members, which includes the chairperson, the DFO, and the committee members. Everybody else is a member of the public. This distinction is important because committee information and work should not be shared outside the committee structure. Therefore, if the committee is working on a deliverable, members should not be sharing the draft work products within their organization for input or opinion of and the committee staff should not be sharing products within GSA for input. Let me add to the committee roles. There's another role outside of the committee is that every agency, they have multiple committees, they have a CFO, and that is Ms. Mackenzie Robertson, and she has a wealth of information that Arthur has at his disposal to help make sure that we do this right. Because I know a lot of people, this is their first time serving on the Federal Advisory Committee. And for some people, it is the first time working in the federal government. And so a lot of these things are new. And Mackenzie and the people that work with her are going to help us stay on track and make sure that everything goes well. Next slide. And this is my last one. And that's a committee meeting. So some of this is kind of a repeat, but FACA requires that all committee meetings be open to the public. Now, an exception to that is the type of meeting that we're having now, which is called an administrative meeting. Because administrative meetings don't involve substantive work of the committee, they're not required to be open to the public. Another exception is a preparatory meeting where members are convened solely to conduct work such as gathering information or conducting research. Now, just because a meeting is not required to be open to the public doesn't mean we can't open it. And as we've done here, in the spirit of openness, we are allowing the public to see what we're doing here today. Public meetings, whether they're open or closed, can be held in person, via teleconference, virtually, or in a hybrid environment. But all must be noticed publicly and at least 15 calendar days in advance through a meeting notice published in the Federal Register. So as Arthur alluded to, in order to comply with that 15-day calendar notice, the DFO is going to need at least 30 days because this is a federal agency. It takes a while to get everything staffed, approved, and then submitted. So that means that meetings can't just be scheduled and held on the spot. They require advanced planning. This deliberation requires some deliberation and deliberative conduct. It also means that committee meetings cannot be spontaneously closed. Meetings can be closed so long as it's approved in advance by GSA's general counsel and the GSA administrator, and the reasons for closure meets one of the criteria in the Government in Sunshine Act. You've probably seen the FACA is a very procedural act. The public is also allowed to file written statements with the committee, and depending on the agenda, may provide oral statements during the committee meetings. The DFO must be present at every committee meeting and the subcommittee meetings. Same goes for the committee chair or subcommittee chair. And then meeting minutes are required for each and every meeting, open to the public or closed. And the administrative and preparatory, for the administrative preparatory meetings, and the chairman must certify the minutes within 90 days of the meeting. After certification, the minutes of open meetings are posted to the committee website. So that is my summary of the FACA. If people have questions moving forward, please feel free to reach out through Arthur, and we will try to handle things in the best way going forward to make sure that we do all that we can to make this meeting successful and this committee successful. And with that, turn the time back over.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was very informative, a lot of information, but we definitely appreciate it. Before we move to the next item on the agenda, I just want to make sure that no one has a question and or the hand raised. Okay. So next on the agenda, we will have our Chair, Daniel Schumann, will provide information on his vision for committee work and have a discussion on the bylaws before we hold a vote. Now I turn the meeting over to you, Daniel.
Great. Thank you very much, Arthur. I appreciate it. And I wanted to thank Jeremy. Oh gosh, and I'm sorry, I forgot our attorney's name.
Anderson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both for those detailed presentations. It's a lot of information to absorb, both the ethical requirements and the operational requirements for the Federal Advisory Committee. It's a very sort of interesting circumstance. And I know that we'll be coming back to both of you with many more questions, either directly or through Arthur. Thank you both. So many of the presentations today concern the rules that govern how the Open Government Federal Advisory Committee must operate. As everyone knows, we receive significant operational support from GSA. We're also limited by both law and practice concerning where and how we can conduct our deliberations. It's my hope that the Open Government Federal Advisory Committee can both model best practices for open government and also to move expeditiously to establish our committee structure and to begin to get to work on the substantive issues before the committee. Our recommendations are ours to make. We are an independent body of experts, and we can set our agenda within the framework of the charter and the bylaws. Each of us brings our own strengths and experiences. It is my intention to foster collaboration, discussion, and collective decision-making. My hope is that we can reach decisions that are acceptable to the vast majority of us. I think this is in line with the presentations, particularly that we heard just a few moments ago. In light of the significant work ahead, we're going to have to hit the ground running. It's my intention, or at least my hope, to hold, in consultation, of course, with the folks at the Secretariat, monthly meetings of the full committee, at least for the next few months, as we get our house in order. My goal is to keep these meetings comparatively short out of respect for your time. I figure that shorter meetings at a more rapid cadence might be better than having lengthy meetings, but of course, if folks feel differently, just drop Arthur and me a note, and we can figure out a way to balance it for y'all. And of course, once we start to establish subcommittees or working groups or whatever we end up calling these things, we can change the cadence of our full committee meetings. There are some preliminary questions that we have to address. How are we going to evaluate ideas for inclusion in our recommendations? How will we receive and disclose input from stakeholders? How will we structure our subcommittees to manage our work? These three issues of developing an evaluation rubric, managing public input, and establishing substantive working groups are going to be key to getting us started. And of course, this will all have to be done in consultation with ethics and advice from the Secretariat, so that we do this within the framework and the scope of the Federal Advisory Committee. In advance of our first substantive meeting next week, I have been putting pen to paper to flesh out specifically what I'm looking for. And with Arthur's help, I'll be sharing it with you and with the public. Not today, but in the future, I'll be asking for volunteers to help with some preparatory meetings on these different topics for the purpose of conducting research and identifying possible best practices. We're going to do this, of course, in compliance. So you saw that there is a 30-day requirement for certain types of meetings, and for sub-quorum meetings, there's other ways this works. We're going to figure this all out. And of course, those will not be deliberative meetings. Deliberation has to take place either at the full committee or when we stand them up, the subcommittees, for both collective evaluation and deliberation. It's my hope that even for these preparatory meetings, that while they're not required to be open to the public to the extent we can, we should try to open them up. Just as today's administrative meeting wasn't required to be open to the public, but with the help from our friends over at the Secretariat, we were able to do so anyway. For any members of the public who are watching these proceedings now or online, if you have suggestions on any of these topics or anything else, I'd encourage you to email ogfac@gsa.gov in advance. We're going to have ample time to talk about all of these things. This is an administrative meeting today. I'm not trying to get us into the substance, but I did want to give you a preview of coming attractions. I think where we need to go now, though, is for a discussion of the bylaws. They were transmitted to everyone. You had an opportunity to review them. You'll probably note that the bylaws do not spell out some of the details about how this committee or the subcommittee or the working groups will operate. Some of this we're just going to have to figure out as we go along in consultations with committee staff. There are also some constraints about what can be included in the bylaws. but it is worth noting that we can make recommendations to the GS administrator should we collectively determine that it makes sense to update the charter and bylaws if appropriate. That is also not something that we need to do today. You know, have 2 hours into this, I think that would be a lot. But this is a moment, since you have had the opportunity to review some of these documents, if you have any questions or any concerns, or if you'd like to make any amendments, offer any amendments to the bylaws, obviously this would have to still comply with all relevant law, but if there are things that you would like to raise, I think this is the time to do so. Arthur, do you want me to manage this conversation, or do you want to manage it? Do you have a preference?
Nope, Dan, you're doing a great job. Keep going.
So, okay, so I'll stay. So if folks have either questions or concerns or comments or amendments, this is the time to offer them. And of course, if you don't want to offer them now, we can discuss this later on. But we do need to make a determination about whether we are going to approve the bylaws. So I'm looking for hands if folks have hands that they'd like to raise. Remember, it's just the ellipse in the bottom right of your screen. And at the bottom of that, you can raise your hand. And I'm just going to pause for a couple seconds because I know it sometimes can take a moment as people are thinking it through. I wish we had some Jeopardy music, but that's probably would create some conflicts. Oh, okay. Ron, please go ahead.
I just had one, I think, semi-substantive suggestion for amendment, and that is under the provision for keeping minutes, that we, it says note who is there, and I was just wondering if we ought to note who isn't there that's a member of the OGFAC. Just, you know, another line, so we're making a record of attendance.
I should figure out how to use the mute button. So just to repeat it back to make sure that I understand. So it should be a listing of all the folks who are supposed to be there, and then whether they are present and whether they are not. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, exactly, and I thought that tied in with another part of the bylaws that indicated that you know, after 2 missed meetings, there might be some discussion about that, and I just thought that would be a more straightforward way of determining you know, those situations.
Yeah, I mean that certainly seems reasonable. Let me turn to you. Stay with us, Ron, for a second. But let me turn to Arthur, just because in part the minutes are something that you will be drafting. Is this something that you can incorporate into your practice, or is it something that we should, or is this what your practice would be anyway, or is there something that we should consider?
Thank you, Ron, for your question, and Dan for sending it over. Yes, that will be a normal part of our record keeping.
So
amendment or that update is not an issue.
All right. So just to confirm, so Arthur, it will be your practice to indicate who should be there and whether or not they are present. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Ron, does that address your concern, or would you like to go forward and we can consider changing the language as well?
No, I just thought it might be clearer, but it's fine. If that's going to be the practice, it ought to, you know, ought to be good.
Okay. And if it turns out that, I mean, I can't imagine it would be an issue, but if it turns out to be an issue, we can come back and revisit it. Just to make sure that we can do it, because your recommendation, I think, makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Does anybody else, or Ron, of course, you're welcome to go again, but does anyone else have questions or comments, recommendations or amendments to the bylaws? I'm comfortable with this, with silence, so it's fine for me. Okay. So I think that for my part, having looked at them closely, I think that in the future we may wish to revisit both the bylaws and the charter, but seeing no concerns at the moment, Arthur, I'm going to hand it over to you because I think you need to conduct the vote. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan. So at this point, we will start with the roll call. What I'd like to ask is that each of the members take yourself off of mute now. And when your name is called, you can say yes. Your response could be yes, no, or abstain. As a reminder on how to cast your vote, when I call on you by name, please respond with yes, no, or abstain. Members must be in attendance to cast a vote. Just for your understanding, a majority requires 51% of the members present. For example, if we have 15 members in attendance, a minimum of 8 yes votes is required to adopt. In the event of a tie, the chair will call for a revote with discussion. All right, so at this time, I will call you by name and then wait for your response. Joyce? Ajay?
Yes. Yes.
John Dirk?
Yes. Yes.
Charles Cutshaw?
Yes.
Amy Holmes?
Yes.
Christian Honey?
Yes.
Kirill?
Yes.
Ronald?
Yes.
Janice? Long?
Yes.
Aid?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yeah.
And Karina?
Yes.
With all yeses, the bylaws have been adopted. Our chairman would like to have some closing remarks before I think we get ready for our closing. And I think you're also going to ask them if we have any more questions before we end. So I turn it back over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Arthur. Congratulations. We have reached unanimous agreement on something at least. So congratulations to all of us. So I wanted to thank everyone for your participation at today's meeting. We have a big task in front of us, and I think the reward will be worth the effort. I'm excited to work with each and every one of you, and I've enjoyed getting to know you so far. I did want to just take a moment to open up the floor. This has been a lot of presentations and a lot of conversations. And if people had something they wish to intervene with, I would love to hear from you all. I see Kristen has an intervention. So Kristen, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, Daniel. So in this spirit of, the open government FAC or OG FAC or whatever we call it, creating a culture and a norm where everyone's voices are equally valued. And it's true open government of the people, by the people, for the people, where lived experience and all of our experiences are really elevated and given space to come through. In that kind of vein and spirit, I'd love to put kind of a norm, a cultural norm forward for us to use first names without doctor titles or whatever, honorable and all that, that within the FAC and the committees and how we conduct our business with each other. Obviously, if, the president or secretaries walk in, we may have to use formalities. However, amongst ourselves and all the events, opportunities, discussions that we lead, I would love to have kind of a universal policy that we forget titles and we're all on a first name basis. So I guess I put that forward as a motion for like a cultural norm for the FAC.
That sounds great. So there's an opportunity for debate. So would folks, if you would like to weigh in either in favor or in opposition or to raise a concern, just raise your hand and I'll recognize you. I'll do it in the order. So I see Suzanne. You're recognized.
I fully support this. I think it's a great idea.
Wonderful. Anyone else who would like to weigh in for, against, or otherwise? I see Janice. You're recognized.
I second.
Thank you. Amy.
I also wanted to note support of Christian's proposition.
Thank you kindly. And I saw one other. Josh, were you on? Oh, Ade, please.
I support as well. Oh,
No, you're great. We heard you.
okay, good.
Yeah. Anyone else who would like to be recognized? Josh.
So I think just as someone that's watched public meetings, it can sometimes be hard to follow from as a member of the public when committee members are overly familiar, I think. So we should just keep in mind that if we're referring to people by first names that may not match maybe how they appear on Zoom or something like that, maybe like, on, first time we mention someone, we should just be clear who we're talking to for the public. But I agree otherwise.
Okay, that's fair. And it may be, sorry, I shouldn't respond. I will respond after other folks have a chance to weigh in. Anybody else who hasn't spoken? Okay. So I think to Josh's point, one thing that we could do is as we put our names in the Zoom box, if for to the extent that we're virtual, we can try to use the names that we would, that would be reflected that we would use as a group. And I will try, I will use people's first names, but I'll also try to be clear and intentional so that if there's some possible confusion about who is speaking, to make it so that it's easier for whoever might be listening along. And of course, when looking over the minutes, that's, when reviewing those, because I think I'm the one who has to approve them. I think that's how it works. I'll try to make sure that the minutes are also reflective of the conversation. So if there's something that's not clear, we can have it reflected there. But otherwise, I didn't see any dissent. So what I'm going to do, unless Arthur, unless you think there's a different approach, but I'm going to say we're going to do this by unanimous consent. So unless there is an objection, then this will be our practice going forward. So not seeing any concern at the moment from Arthur. So I'm going to say, all right, I'm moving this on a unanimous consent basis. So if there's anybody who disagrees with this, please, this is a good time to speak up, and I'll just wait a couple moments. You can either come off mute or raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Okay, seeing no dissent, this is adopted unanimously. So we will refer to each other by our first names. Unless, of course, it's the president, and then we'll figure out what makes sense in that context. But we should be lucky to have that problem. Okay, are there other folks who would like, Kristen, thank you so much for raising that issue. Are there other folks who would like to either ask a question, make a comment, or raise an issue that we should address at this point? Okay, I don't see anyone. So with that, since there are no further questions, thank you all for today. I'm going to turn this back over to Arthur because I know that he has some concluding remarks, and he will also adjourn our meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Daniel. Great meeting. In closing, I just want to say to the members, understand your role and expectations. Refer to the bylaws in your appointment letter. Be aware if you are subject to ethics or conflicts of interest laws and understand what that entails. Keep your DFO informed and include them in all relevant communications. And when it comes to member interactions, any communication among the majority of the committee about committee work can be considered a meeting under FACA and must be conducted publicly. Always reference the committee charter, bylaws, and your appointment letters as needed. When in doubt, reach out to your chairperson or the DFO. As your DFO, I am always available to answer any questions, so please, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all of our presenters, attendees, stakeholders for joining us today, including those who provided the comments. I'd like to also give a special thank you to everyone who has contributed to the successful establishment of this committee and to those who supported today's meeting. Please remember to join us for our first public meeting on October 23rd, 2024 at 1 p.m. The agenda items that we plan to cover is we will have the welcome. We will be provided remarks by GSA leadership, White House remarks, We will have an overview by the Open Government Secretariat. The chair will provide some remarks. There will be a history and overview of the Open Government Partnership, a brief history of U.S. open government efforts starting in 2009, a NAP6 timeline overview, and organizing the OG-FAC committee discussion. And then from there, we'll be open for public oral comments. And then last but not least, we will have a White House closing remarks, and then our closing remarks and adjournment. So please be reminded to register. Registration information is available on our website and in the Federal Registry notice for our meetings. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you again for your time.